This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. We are getting closer to celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ on Easter Sunday. So if you have not already, go to 40daysforlife.com and find your location and be part of this Lent campaign. Our local leaders will thank you. We will thank you. Go to 40daysforlife.com, find your location. If you have not, for some reason, gone out to your vigil yet, it is not too late. So you can finish strong by finding your location, going out, and peacefully praying. Today, we will cover the very important topic of abortion and the mental health crisis. And somebody who has been diagnosed multiple times with mental health issues is my co-host, Mr. Steve Carlin.
I don't know.
I told myself I wasn't going to make mental health jokes on the mental health podcast.
Seems
and
rude.
then I saw you walk in the room, and I'm like, it's just got to happen.
Very rude.
Without a straitjacket. Boy.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Steve has his good days. He has his bad days. We are also joined by Dr. Haywood Robinson. How are you doing? You've been traveling a lot.
I'm blessed today. The campaign trail is hot, successful, and the Lord is present there. Daphne and I have spent 10 hours in College Station since February the 6th, as of Tuesday. So it's beautiful out there. Our campaigns are doing so well. The maturity of our campaign leaders is picking up, and the organization is wonderful. Thank you for Steve and your team, the way you keep us organized. I just don't see how you guys do it, but thank you so much, and we're looking forward to bringing it on to the end for this spring campaign.
It's been very exciting, and I don't know if we've shared on the podcast, but we had our first ever 40 Days for Life 365 Leader Symposium in January. Thank you for those who helped support that. And this was the first time we had brought our year-round vigil leaders, which is very hard, 40 Days for Life 365 leaders. First time they were together in person, specifically for their training. And what I get excited about is those are so crucial right now to the abortion industry because they just don't go away. And it starts to wear on any given local abortion facility. It also creates more opportunities to distribute information about abortion pill reversal and all of those. So it's really, really exciting. I'm looking forward to getting new 40 Days for Life 365 locations, because when you have a year-round presence, which is how this place, our now headquarters, closed, it is detrimental to a local abortion facility. And you've done a great job with that. Obviously, Heather leads that up, but it's been really, really awesome.
I think the proof in the pudding of how essential and effective it is right now to be out there during this campaign, and especially year-round, is we see further evidence of Planned Parenthood kind of circling the drain as defunded and donations down and 40 Days for Life vigils drying up business. This news that they've expanded to Botox and hangover services.
Botox, which you've already made your appointments for them.
Yeah.
But it's...
It's like one step away from opening up here's the Planned Parenthood vape shop.
Okay, so... let's just focus on the Botox.
Okay. All right.
Botox was I didn't know what that was in high school. Did you?
No, was it even around then?
Okay.
Botulism toxin from a very poisonous bacteria.
Sounds great.
But where are they applying this Botox?
But isn't Botox, you would know throughout your medical career, when did Botox go from this kind of new thing to all these doctors lining up saying, now you could go to the OBGYN, you could go to a spine doctor, and all of a sudden they're offering Botox. Was that just another?
It was found, I think, decades ago that Botox helped with migraine headaches if injected in certain places and in the head. But then they noticed that it could tighten up the face, and women, I think one of the pioneers on TV, remember Joan Rivers?
Oh, yeah.
How she just overdosed on that, and their face wouldn't move. It's a paralytic.
Her face
It
wouldn't
paralyzes and puts the facial muscles under tension. So instead of them kind of just sagging, whatever, it tightens them up. But you can overdo it, but I'm just wondering, does that mean they're going into cosmetic surgery? Are they going to be doing piercings? And where exactly are they applying Botox? We're going to apply it anywhere. So I'm just curious. Have you heard any satisfied customers?
Well, and in private, Steve doesn't reveal all of the locations.
In private.
He doesn't reveal where he's had or not had Botox.
I'm going to reveal that right now. I'm live on the 40 Days for Life podcast.
Bleep.
I don't care if anybody uses Botox. If you want to use it, use it. But
we love everyone.
the viewers should know this face, this gorgeous face, 100% natural.
100% all natural. Oh yeah, you look amazing.
It's organic.
You don't even have makeup on. Like you're just like Brad Pitt 1992 over there. Unbelievable.
100%.
And there's documentation of your wife saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Botox does seem. Here's why it's great. Besides the jokes we get to make, this is just mission drift. When you look at Margaret Sanger, when you look at Dr. Alan Guttmacher, the father of Planned Parenthood, this is not the vision they had. And it looks like a money grab to help cash flow for suffering abortion facilities. And the reason this is good is because, and we've covered it a million times, there's an abortion pill crisis right now, right? But it is not at the level that most think it's at. If everybody was taking 5 abortion pills a day like peanut M&Ms, Planned Parenthood would be leading that. They would be making a fortune. They make more money off of abortion pills. And when they start dabbling in these other things that are totally off mission, and I would throw the transgender stuff in there, but now we're doing Botox, and that's a good point. Are they going to get into manicures? Are they going to get into facials? Like what all? Where does this end? And
I don't know if it does, because hangover cures, that sends me. I laugh every time I think about that. A hangover cure. I'm hungover. I'm gonna go to Planned Parenthood.
I'm gonna go.
Infusion of whatever it is.
Isn't that like the lose weight fast scam? Like every 5 years, somebody comes out with like a cure for hangovers or a cure to like lose weight overnight or all this, and I'm like, isn't that the point of a hangover, to punish somebody for their bad decisions the night before?
We could do like a top 10 list on the most hilarious things that we think Planned Parenthood will get into at this point. They should do the thing where if you need to pass a drug test, you go in and you take drink 3 gallons of this, and then you can pass your drug test at work.
They may be adopting the John Party song, where the cure,
a lot of possibilities here.
The cure to the hangover is a beer.
Oh yeah, hair of the dog.
I forget Thomas Rhett. He may be the other guy in that song, but anyways.
And when we talk about hangover, it may be also that for the doctors and staff, as we know, drug abuse and alcohol abuse is very high in people who are involved in the abortion industry, simply because you have to blunt the effects of it within your mind. So that could be another reason. They get to work, another round of hangovers.
You say blunt, that could be another thing. You could have your THC gummy shop at the Planned Parenthood.
Well, in a perfect world, a well-functioning Planned Parenthood abortion facility doesn't have time for Botox, right? Isn't that what they want?
Well, of course, and Matt, our dear friend, always talks about expansion without dilution. Yes, they're diluting because they're becoming less effective. I was just recently at the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, and there's also the same intensity of how the movement and pro-life organizations are growing. Well, life abhors a vacuum, right? So the growth that we're experiencing is definitely at the cost of the enemy's camp going down. And what you're seeing, Planned Parenthood, the alphabet soup of organized medicine, which are nothing more than political organizations, they can't go any higher. They are coming down, but guess who's displacing them? So life-affirming medicine is coming out of the closet. This whole pro-death movement is something new anyway. It's only a century old or so. So we're getting back to our roots. Planned Parenthood is going to be thought of in a totally different way, I believe. In 1 decade, we're going to win. Yeah, there was this Planned Parenthood, and there used to be. You remember how big IBM was in the 60s and 70s?
Yeah.
Well, you guys were rather young, but IBM, and then IBM took over from what other corporation? General Electric was the largest corporation in the country. So what we're going to see, the death culture of a major corporate entity of Planned Parenthood is coming down, baby, and we're taking them out of the knees. In Jesus' name, amen?
Hey, there we go.
Hey, there we go.
Okay, well, with that, I don't think we've actually covered this topic in depth. And so this is really good because, first off, we don't really need to cover it because we've been told for years that there's no connection with abortion and mental health issues that women go through. I remember the first time I was introduced to this, I was reading one of Randy Alcorn's great books in like 2003. And there was a study on women's prisons, really interesting, women prisons. And they would go
Before they let men into them or not?
right. There's no trans. It's actually just women. Yeah. Small disclaimer. Back in 2003 when the world was normal. Okay. So you go back and they study all these women and they're basically trying to look for the similarities and any kind of correlation. And there were two. And one of them they expected, which is a bad father. Okay. That all these women ended up in prison. The other was overwhelmingly, like 86% had had an abortion. It was this ridiculous. And the researcher said, we didn't even go looking for this. We support abortion rights. We thought, if anything, this would help liberate them so they could live the lives they wanted and avoid prison and all of this. But that number was so high for this particular prison that abortion had to be destructive in some way.
Yeah.
If over 80% of the women in prison had one, and the only other thing was they had a lousy or abusive father, which most people would probably guess or, assume. So that was the first time I was introduced to it. And over time, as you think about it, it makes perfect sense. A woman's body is created to enhance life and all of this. And whether it's she doesn't have a man who's going to stay with her, or she feels coerced, or she just is chasing a career, or whatever it is, that abortion propped up as a positive has to be a negative. I mean, you're paying somebody to kill your own child, and to just say that has no mental repercussions is just burying your head in the sand. And so, but we are told over and over, we're making this up.
Well, it's double-minded. Let's look at it this way. When a woman has a miscarriage, or what we call a spontaneous abortion, that's a medical diagnosis. Spontaneous abortion is a miscarriage. We accept that a woman's supposed to have grief. Mm-hmm. Grief can sometimes be associated with depression. Now, there's another thing we have to recognize physiologically. The hormone of progesterone, which we talk about a lot because of abortion pill reversal, the progesterone levels are going up. And what we've noticed that progesterone enhances just well-being. Have you ever seen some women when they get pregnant, they sometimes get a whole lot happier, some the other direction, but in general, it's usually a better feeling of well-being. They're preparing their hearts and bodies to be loving and nurturing. Now, there's two things to look at. When a woman has a miscarriage, that's a natural process, and the hormone levels go down gradually. The body handles things gradually much better than abrupt things, okay? Now, what happens when you do an abortion and you take out all of that tissue that's manufacturing progesterone, it happens abruptly. This is the same principle that Dr. Joel Brin, with his correlation with breast cancer awareness, that bad things happen when you do something unnatural. So that causes, all of a sudden the brain now, it's a depression. Another similar situation we can think of, a clinical correlation, is postpartum depression. The woman is sky high on these high levels of progesterone. The placenta is this massive organ making all of this progesterone, and then the baby is delivered, and all of that progesterone suddenly drops, and women have something that we refer to as postpartum depression. Do all women get it? No, but it's an example of how when you drop a hormone or change anything in our bodies, many times there's a negative sequelae. So of course it's there. And the other reasons, other than just hormonal, if a woman has a miscarriage, she grieves. But if a woman pays to have that loss, pays to have her child killed, you have a double whammy. So of course, it's obvious. It makes common sense that depression and mental illness go along with fetal loss or child loss.
And physiologically, that makes perfect sense. But what they do also is you can go through the science and say, of course this is going to happen, and they're like, you're just this pro-life propaganda. But we never listen to the women themselves. And we have these wonderful women who really, lead the pro-life movement over the last few decades who have had an abortion and now speak out. We talk about the high percentage of local 40 Days for Life campaign leaders who are women who have had an abortion, and they just tell you directly, of course I went through depression. Of course I had mental issues. Of course I had some go as far as having, suicide thoughts, and just they will testify to that they had all of them. And then we just kind of, write them off. But women who have an abortion are more than twice as likely to be hospitalized for mental health, psychiatric disorders, substance abuse disorders, suicide attempts, versus women who give birth.
Yeah, this is a study that came out fairly recently from the Journal of Psychiatric Research. And I like to emphasize that, as I often do, to say this is not Life News put out or the Catholic Church put out a study. This is peer-reviewed medical research, and it's a massive sample size. They're looking at 1.2 million births and tens of thousands of abortions to come up with this, but more
29,000 abortions.
Yeah, 29,000, more than twice as likely to not just experience. This isn't, I think it's important to note, this isn't self-reported. A lot of times you'll see these studies and whatever secular news channel comes up, like, latest study shows there's no negative correlation between abortion and mental health. And then you look at the methodology and it's something to the effect of, well, we surveyed the women for a year after their abortion and they said they were happy with it. Well, which ones were responding? Which one? If you're depressed, are you less likely to respond to a survey like that? Yes, you are. If you're miserable, are you less likely? Yes, you are. And so this is one where they're looking at very objective data. They're talking about hospitalization, which is a serious, I'm not a doctor, Dr. Haywood, but I would assume the hospitalization is a pretty serious marker and it's objective. You're not just, it's not just like J.D. Power and Associates best initial quality on your abortion type of thing.
I think, too, what's great, and we've been fortunate to work with a lot of post-abortive women, is that they remove the shame or the stigma that can be associated with mental health. Because when they talk about their struggles with mental health after an abortion, it's to point to the fact that that's the way that it goes. That's because abortion is bad and it's unnatural, and that this isn't something you shouldn't be embarrassed of the fallout of it. That's really an appropriate response, is to enter this depression and really struggle because of what you went through. It's very real. And I think that's good, because obviously mental health had a stigma for a while. It doesn't now, because we have this massive, mental health crisis in our country on many different fronts. But I think that the post-abortive women are the most honest group of people about mental health than I would say a lot of other groups.
Something else go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that this is not the only study that's shown that. Decades ago, there was a very large Medicaid study where basically you just look at what the insurance claims are, or discharge data. So this is actually what happened during that hospitalization. These are just the facts, ma'am. This is not someone asking, how do you feel, or whatever. This is what was treated in the hospital. Now, this is very similar what the Ethics and Public Policy Committee found last year about the abortion pill and how the complications are. You go and look at claims data, which is basically just the facts. What did the people have? And that's what we found. Again, this has been replicated time and time again. So it's no doubt, and of course, with this, I don't know what the ACOG said about this particular study, whether it's flawed or not, but of course they said that about the EPPC. But anything that shows a negative light on abortion, ACOG is going to say that it's a flawed study. You can always count on that.
So we're talking vulnerable populations, folks that maybe are less likely to have support structures in place to help them get through this. And the study shows that there are two populations that are particularly vulnerable to hospitalization after abortion, and that is young women and those with pre-existing mental health issues. It's tragic to me, especially as you consider the push in some of these blue states to put abortion pills on college campuses, put abortion pills accessing that to young people, students even in high school, the preying upon these young women and those who are already at risk. It's a recipe for disaster.
No, it really is. And the stats just show that this is a real problem. First off, I know you hear that. We thought that the second coming of Jesus was happening in the parting of the clouds, you know?
And then we would just go.
And then we thought, this is the end. We're going to end in this building together.
In the twinkling of an eye.
And then we looked out, and there's just trimming trees on the highway. So we're safe. The second coming has not happened as of the recording of this podcast. It just sounds like it. But the whole denial of abortion supporters saying there's no mental health issues, which is so disingenuous, because if there are and they care about women, don't you want to get to the bottom of that? You know, but
Yeah.
Well, not if it's disparaging to your commodity that you have to sell. We got to remember we're marketing something that we want people to believe is right and that's good for them, and there's really no significant complications or sequelae. But the other thing we want people to understand is that symptomatology and issues are additive. So if you have a person with a family history of depression and they have an abortion, well, it's probably likely they may have a lower threshold for depression. So when you add guilt to that, that's another thing that we have to take in consideration of. Again, kind of similar to the Breast Cancer Association. If a woman has a positive family history for breast cancer and then has a first trimester abortion, those factors are additive. But then you have a whole society of people who've been raised in an environment, in a society that says they don't have really any worth or no purpose, you know, because killing babies is something normal. So it's a multitude of things that have an additive effect. And so that's another reason we're seeing an increase in that prevalence, because of the additive effects.
It's also, this study shows that it's a durable effect. The risk of hospitalization did not dissipate for 17 years. And speaking of the additive, if you've had multiple abortions, that then further increases the risk. So there's a lot of bad factors that are all adding up.
I want to pause at the guilt part, because that is something that all spiritual fathers and spiritual directors for centuries have said, that one of the reasons of our modern, neurotic behavior is because we've had deep down a denial of sin, not just with abortion, but of just sin in general. And when you don't have any healthy notion of sin, everything you do is perfect. And if you think that you're perfect in your mind, you go crazy, because you know that you're not. So I know Fulton Sheen said that for years, that the reason we're neurotic is because we haven't released our guilt. We haven't essentially confessed our sins and admitted that we're not as we ought to be. And to me, you can clearly see the difference. We've experienced it ourselves. But as it pertains to abortion, the women who have gone through healing, who have been forgiven by God, forgiven themselves, and gone through that road, it's not an overnight thing, but it's very real. If you don't do that, isn't the pent-up guilt and shame and anger, that has real consequences?
Yes. Well, you know, the woman knows it's there. They know they're hurting. The other thing is the shame. We haven't talked much about that. So many of these women have not told anyone because it's not safe. They'll sit in church for decades and the pastor won't even bring up the subject of abortion. As we're on the campaign trail, and both of you have seen women and heard stories about this 60-year-old woman who one day just confesses, I haven't told anyone about this. And this stuff is garnered interest over the years, compounded interest. And one day, like an abscess, all of that pus comes out. But what I think we want to leave our audience with is that the women who are listening, that abortion is not the unforgivable sin.
No.
All right? And that there's hope for forgiveness, for healing, and they too can humanize that child and name it and be a part of God's kingdom. But that's been a great failure, unfortunately, on behalf of the church. But we, as our ministry of 40 Days for Life, that's something that we're going to have to continue to say that these women, there is hope. I know there's hope as a former abortionist. I have so much remorse for all the hundreds of women that I've damaged. But there is hope through Jesus Christ.
This is something that has a direct connection to the 40 Days for Life campaign. Because we'll have 40 Days for Life leaders and team members who are going around and they're recruiting and they're promoting 40 Days for Life, and they're trying to get the message out in their churches. And they'll reach out, they'll email me or Heather or Christy or whoever on our team. Oh, my pastor won't let us promote 40 Days for Life, and he won't talk about abortion because he's concerned that it may harm the women in the pews who have suffered the trauma of abortion. And that's where we always say that's the exact wrong approach is silence. The silence makes them feel judged and condemned more so than talking about it. Because you can talk, and everybody who's pro-life, I think, talks about abortion in the context of God's mercy. Yes, it is sin. Yes, it is evil. But we serve an all-powerful, all-forgiving God who wants to bring his mercy. And so when it seems like it's a forbidden topic, you can't even talk about it. You can talk about every other issue under the sun from the pulpit, but not abortion. That sends a message that it's unforgivable. And I think that's where some of this pain and emotional and mental health issues that we're discussing here fail to resolve because we're not hearing anything but silence from the pulpits. In some cases, there's a lot of great clergy who are talking about it, and I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but there are also many cases where it is just under this veil.
It's definitely talked about now more than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty, I would say, widespread as opposed to 20 or 30 years ago. And I understand both points. I understand a male pastor in 1995 thinking, what we're just 20 years after Roe v. Wade, thinking, I'm just going to crush some of these poor women if I go off, on abortion. So I'm just not going to say anything. I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I get it. And I really understand, which was foreign to me as a young man until a post-abortive woman said it, which is what you said. He addressed all sin, and my sin was so bad he couldn't even preach on it, and we would just never think about it from that perspective. And which makes no sense, because with every other issue in our lives, if we're struggling with something, if you have a struggle with a relationship with somebody or a job or your finances or your health, we like hearing other people talk about that so that we can maybe get a nugget out of it to help us in our own lives. So it's actually the opposite. You want people to talk about things that you personally are struggling with. You don't have to let them know you're struggling with it, but it helps to have this dialogue. And certainly from a pastor, but it's obviously a great disservice because the women are sitting there going, well, now I can't even tell anybody because it's I feel shame, and shame is from without. Shame is when other people see us for our sins or our we have mustard on our shirt or whatever, we have shame. Guilt is from within. Guilt is the check engine light that is your conscience and is much more important. Shame may come and go. We give a lot of credit to shame, like don't shame that person and all that. But what's worse is guilt, and guilt can be relieved through forgiveness of sins. So I think that you mentioned the societal issues. If we have no sin, then the guilt is some kind of mental problem that you have. Like, what's the matter with you? Why do you feel bad about that? And you hear this in conversation a lot with people, like, you don't need to feel bad about that. And I'm always, sometimes I do need to feel bad about something, or sometimes you need to feel bad about something. It's like, yeah, I did this and that was wrong, and I need to, apologize to this person, or I need to. Every now and then I will accuse the wrong kid of a crime against mom or our house rules or something, and it's really bad. Like, it's like I accused the wrong kid and I got mad at him, and I have to apologize to that kid and then create the hunt for the guilty party. But
there's also another factor there, Sean. When you have high-profile celebrities saying things like "shout your abortion," and you will have some people chime in, but do you know what it must be like for some woman who's hurting about the child she's aborted, and then this high-level celebrity that they worship is telling them to shout your abortion? How hurtful that must be to them, because it just doesn't fly. And
right.
When we're out on the campaign trail, you'll see a lot of these women and their signs, basically shouting their abortion. There was one sign just saw last week. What it says? Live, love, and abort. I mean, wow,
Which is the ripoff of the live, love, laugh.
So there are people out there who are way out, but no, it's something that a woman is not designed to do.
Yeah.
It's simply as that, and you can see that through any mammalian species for sure, that they will never basically harm their young.
There's that adage that God always forgives, man sometimes forgives, but nature never forgives. And I think we see that playing out with abortion here.
Well, and it's two areas. It's society saying, shout your abortions, no big deal, it's great. And then it's the very dark reality, which is the devil will always take your sins and build them up and exaggerate them and keep you from mercy and forgiveness. So he's the great tempter before you commit a sin, and then right when you commit a sin, he's the great prosecutor. Look at you. You think you're a great Christian. Look at what you did. What a phony, blah, blah, blah. And particularly when it comes to an unborn child, because this is how God defeats him, is through the womb and through Jesus coming into a family. And so he hates life. He hates certainly the unborn, and he loves abortion because it's the opposite of the Annunciation. Be it done unto me according to thy word. It's no, me and my body and my choice, and I have control. And right when you fall for that, he comes with fire and fury of look at you. And that's the depression. That's the guilt. That's the shame. That's the you'll never recover from this. How in the world could you possibly do that? Look at all these other great moms raising their kids, and you aborted yours. You're terrible. And that's a lack of awareness of the devil attacking you is probably where a lot of these women are at, right? And it's just it's a horrible spiral. And he'll convince you your life is not worth living, and that's when you get these suicide rates and these thoughts of suicide. And we can never remove the fact that the devil is. It's not that just the world is saying it's no big deal, which is total BS. It's that the devil's saying it's the biggest deal in the world, and you'll never overcome it.
It also shows you something about the nature of the devil, I think, in that evil is not a positive, not as in positive versus negative, but evil is not something that's real. It's the absence of goodness, and the devil can't create anything. The devil can't do anything. All the devil can do is destroy life, and then destroy the life of the mother who has had the abortion.
And he can't know our thoughts. I think this is something a lot of people forget. He can only tempt you based on how he observes you.
Oh.
So he can see your tendencies. He can see your previous sins. He can hear your conversations, but he can't know your thoughts. He may not actually know how much you're struggling with something, but he can observe you and then set new temptations. Right. And that is, when it comes to abortion, it's just right there that this is, he knows you've been to church. He knows you had an abortion. He knows you did this. He knows who you've told, who you haven't told. And he'll definitely use that against you. And I mean, on the flip side of all this, it's just, to me, it is so edifying I mean, I've known you a long time, and your story is out there. But these women that really, whether they're coerced into an abortion or they have an abortion, to overcome that, having gone through it and laid on the table, and to see some of them just thrive, it's really inspiring. And I think too often we forget the overwhelming power of mercy in our culture, and our society says mercy's a joke. You don't need it, or you're not worthy of it, which is a totally depressing message from our culture. But it's really, really beautiful. And this is what not to get into all the woke stuff, but nothing is ever good enough. You're completely irredeemable, or we can never forgive you for what you did. And just the opposite is true.
It's wonderful how just cathartic mercy can be, because I think the shout your abortion stuff comes from a sense of guilt that is then being projected. It's projected onto the pro-lifer who's standing out in front of the facility. It's projected onto the church. It's projected everywhere else. And it's so much easier to just, whatever your sin, abortion or anything else, it's so much easier to just own it. Yes, I did this. It was bad. I'm turning it over to God. Kind of cracked me up. I went to confession last weekend, and the priest is like, yeah, sometimes our confessions can make us look like pretty terrible people. And like,
I'm not speaking to anybody specifically now.
And it was like, yep, thank God that there's forgiveness and mercy.
That's right. Well, I told you about that Nigerian Benedictine monk. He wore me out one day. It was like 3 years ago, and it was glorious. So
there's another factor we have to recognize, and that is 50% of the people that get abortions will identify as Christians. So the woman is bombarded with, "Wow, I'm a Christian, and I guess I won't be able to teach Sunday school, or what are my Christian friends going to think?" So it's a double whammy. How am I going to fit into church again? This is not the type of thing I can share at confession. So there's another layer there that, and so many, unfortunately, our pastors and priests. I know of a situation where this family had their 14-year-old daughter became pregnant. And they were, of course, shocked. And they reached out to their parish priest. And that parish priest basically told them, "I don't deal with stuff like this."
Ooh.
Ouch.
Yeah. And basically what happened in the long run is that the parents bullied their 14-year-old daughter into getting an abortion. And if there would have only been a priest who would have stood up and said, "I'm here to help. Christ can take us through this." So unfortunately, we have clergy who not only will they not talk about it, abortion, but they won't try to help families who are dealing with an unexpected pregnancy, which is so unfortunate.
And that's always going to be a problem. Weak clergy and just useless and not helpful at all. But you have things like Rachel's Vineyard, and you have all of these healing retreats. And I think the woman, you mentioned the Sunday school. The other thing is people aren't entitled to know about every bad thing you've ever done. Mm-hmm. So you don't really have to share it. And I think that's helpful of having these private, post-abortive healing retreats and meetings where you can go. Everybody's been through what you've been through, and you can kind of do that. But I don't think people have to run around their church and tell everybody that they have an abortion. It's probably an unhealthy thing. But you do need to talk about it, and you do need to, find hope and healing. And those resources are abundant, for sure. So, and most priests I know that are the most passionate about preaching against abortion, just from the Catholic perspective, are those who have been part of the post-abortion healing in Rachel's Vineyard and those retreats, because their eyes are opened up to the depth of the pain.
Something I think is worth noting about this study that we're talking about is it directly addresses some of those other studies or reports that we've seen in the mainstream media that say, well, there's no actual correlation between, or at least causation between mental health and abortion. And this study actually looks through and addresses the reasons why some studies have said there's no negative mental health impact. One of the things here is the study suggests that those other studies that indicate no mental health impact are because they lack a comparison population or are inconsistent in their comparison populations. So what that means, essentially, all of our kids who are in 6th grade or 8th grade or whenever you learn about the scientific method, you know if you run an experiment, what do you have to have? A control group. And a lot of these reports that are saying, oh, there's no negative impact on mental health, they either don't have a control group or it is not a neutral control group. They're comparing apples to oranges or comparing apples to nothing at all. And so this is great because this study that we're looking at here, again, we're talking about more than 1 million births and nearly 30,000 abortions. This is a perfectly representative study of the pregnant population. So that's good news. Some of the research that has indicated no mental health impact to abortion has been criticized for selection bias. We talked a little bit earlier about low response rates, who is likely to respond to a survey about their abortion satisfaction. Maybe not the people who are in bed with depression or in the hospital. Those studies typically involve a lot of a high dropout rate. The further you get away from the abortion, people just lose interest and quit participating, and that may not be at an equal representation. And in particular, the women who had negative feelings about their abortions were more likely to drop out of the surveys. And so this just gets back to what I said before with regard to this isn't about self-reported customer satisfaction data. This is raw, objective hospitalization data. And also, a lot of those other studies can be short-term. Well, we followed up for a year. Here we've got a study that covered 17 years. So it's deep and it's wide.
The other thing, just the 50,000-foot view, is the controversy hasn't gone away.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had 230 abortions in our country. We've had close to 70 million.
Yeah.
And we just should have gotten over this. The women should have gotten over it. Pro-lifers should have gotten over it. Republicans and Democrats should have gotten over it. And we haven't. It's every election, every presidential debate, sermons, abortion's evil, abortion's great. It's still this heightened controversial issue because of common sense and science have told us the only way to abortion is successful is if you really kill the baby. That's the point of it. And so it has stayed relevant and controversial because of what it is. I mean, we're not talking about penicillin or breast cancer or, how much vitamin C to take, just things that you can just talk about, but there's no big emotions coming forward. This is one of the most common surgeries in our land, and it bothers us more now than it did when we first introduced it 50 years ago. And to me, that's just human nature. Why are we still, if there's just nothing wrong with it and it's been done millions of times, why the fuss? Why can't we do it at 40 weeks? And I still think that the controversy, which is just human nature, shows there's just something wrong with this and we haven't gotten over it.
It reminds me, too, a little bit of, we talk about abortion pill reversal, and California's Attorney General says it doesn't work, and New York's Attorney General says it doesn't work. But this is my daughter.
I know.
But this is my niece. And this is a similar thing. Any of us and many of the people listening can point out numerous people that we know personally who suffered mental health issues after abortion, and they're trying to tell us, no, they don't exist.
But this is why the pro-abortion movement has become a religious cult. Because the Attorney General, who's an idiot in both of those states, if the woman says, I want an abortion, great, we support you, go get one. They go, they take the pill. Then the woman says, hey, I really don't want this abortion. And a doctor offers to help with abortion pill reversal. All with her consent. It works. She has little Billy. She's happy with little Billy. Little Billy's also happy to be alive. And the Attorney General is like, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Who roots against a mom wanting her child?
Yeah.
Think about that. It's the most bizarre divorce that we just created. And as you mentioned, about 100 years is very recent.
It's, it's part of that abortion distortion, the schizophrenia of this whole life issue. And we've talked about this guy, Scott Peterson,
Oh, yeah.
who kills his wife, who's 22 weeks pregnant.
He'd be great to get on the
Right?
podcast.
Yeah, right.
Because just to ask him, you got to be frustrated that California does abortion at 40 weeks and you got second-degree murder for your unborn child.
The courts named this child, I believe it was Connor.
Yes, Connor.
And that it's, how can the government, how can the state have an interest in a preborn child when the father or husband kills the mom? But if Scott Peterson were an OBGYN with a consent signed by the missus, he would just simply be performing an abortion, and it wouldn't be a murder. You just simply cannot have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
And if we go back to that time period, okay, he is dirtbag number one in America for a couple of months, right? And it's like in church, if a preacher says something and there's extra emphasis, you get all the church ladies like, oh, or like, my Lord, and that was Scott Peterson. He killed his wife and she was pregnant. My Lord, you get like that sigh of, he killed his pregnant wife. Well, why is that significant? What difference does it make?
We've both been to the 9/11 memorial, and the names on that beautiful memorial, lady's name and unborn child.
Unborn child.
Really?
Yeah.
But this speaks to our goodness.
Yeah.
Like we do this.
It also, I think, shows just the devolution of the abortion rhetoric over the years. We've talked about how they've just completely lost touch and they're making silly arguments that they didn't used to make. And so I always think 20, 30 years ago, you would hear a lot of abortion supporters say human life begins at birth. And they were wrong. They were dead wrong. They were scientifically wrong. But now you're more likely to hear human life begins when the mother feels like it begins, or it begins if the mother wants the child. And then they claim to be the side of this debate that is devoted to science. It's completely out to lunch.
I think that's why we get the scattered mentality, and as we joke about the Botox, that's very real. And that is there has to be this consistent denial of reality, of science, and abortion has not aged well since it was first introduced. They needed the clump of cells. They needed it to be tucked away with no ultrasounds and just this little blob that kind of goes away, and it's an easy procedure. And as we evolved as a society and we got technology and we put cameras in the womb and we celebrated life as we should naturally, that started to raise more questions about maybe abortion isn't the greatest thing in the world, which is why you see so many people pro-life, particularly Generation Z. So, okay, one thing that happens, and it happens with every issue, I think, in our country, and sometimes it's accurate, but this isn't abortion. They're just poor. That's the reason.
Yeah, causation and correlation are different things.
That's right.
The study accounts for this too, right? They're looking at all the different variables. Just as you were talking about the variables of women who are incarcerated, they're looking at all the variables too to find out what's actually going on here. Oh, maybe they're just poor, and that's why they're being hospitalized. Of the women who had abortions and were hospitalized, poor women were more likely to be hospitalized. 23.6% of those who had abortions and were hospitalized were materially deprived, is how they call it. But only 20% for those who had births. So we're talking a pretty minor difference. When the overall thing was this more than doubles your risk of hospitalization, we're talking like a 3.6% difference if you're just focusing on poverty.
Yeah, it's wild. Okay, this next one, the British Journal of Psychiatry shows an 81% increase in mental health problems after an abortion. You can't deny that.
Seems, I'm not a scientist, but seems statistically significant, Doctor.
Well, how many studies do you have to do to prove that the earth is round and not flat?
Yeah.
There are still people who believe the earth is flat. Okay? We have to move forward with the truth. And I don't know how many studies that people like Dr. Delgado have to do to keep proving that abortion pill reversal works, or that doing bad things to your children, preborn and born, causes depression and causes harm. Yes, we can keep doing that, but we have to concurrently be dealing with the root cause. The Attorney General, who says that abortion pill reversal doesn't work, is not even a physician. I don't call myself an attorney and then tell the Attorney General, well, here's my expertise and my expert opinion on this brief that you've just written. Why do they even have a say at the table? Why do certain people, like a former presidential candidate out of California who sets their sights on pregnancy resource centers that do so much other than abortion pill reversal? Let's just say abortion pill reversal doesn't work. All they do is do ultrasounds on women and give them clothing for their children and do parenting classes. That's not good. Go after them or close them down. So we have to remember that we're not fighting against flesh and blood. We're fighting against the spirit that underwrite the whole death culture. And those are the same gods, those false gods that Israel worshipped. And it's just manifested in higher education. It's manifested in the alphabet soup of political medicine. And it's got its tentacles everywhere. But we, who are the body of Christ, have to keep stating the truth, knowing that the truth is going to set us and set people free. We are going to win. But it is frustrating the level of stupidity that some of these people can rise, or maybe I should say fall to.
Well, but the abortion movement has become a religious movement, first and foremost. It is a religious cult. Abortion is the solution to everything. And if you question it, you are public enemy number one. That's why you see this shift of attorney generals and governors trying to shut down privately funded pregnancy centers that are helping poor single women. That's exactly what they're doing most of the time. And we want to shut them down. Why? Because they're pro-life and we support abortion. And that's a religious effort. They won't talk about science. They've even gotten away from their generic, reproductive rights and all that between a woman and her doctor. It's shout your abortion on demand through 40 weeks. And frankly, that's why they've lost a lot of their base. I mean, they have abandoned, if there was ever a pro-choice for normal people, those people have been shoved out. Both of y'all have spoken at tons of pregnancy center banquets. I've spoken at hundreds over the years. And at nearly every one, there is some pro-choice person who's like, look, I don't agree with you on everything, but I support this. Like, they're actually helping the women. It's the feel-good thing. It's what brings us together. That if you're gonna say don't have an abortion, it's bad, but you're at least offering alternatives to it, great, I can support that. That's not acceptable anymore. That's not acceptable. You have to bend the knee to the cult and say, everything pro-life is awful, and everything that has abortion without any limits whatsoever is gold.
I think there's a direct line from that to the guilt component, because it's not enough for me to have a right to abortion. I also need to know that nobody else is choosing life. It's like the phenomenon where you quit smoking and your friends who smoke try to talk you out of it. You lose weight and your friends who are overweight try to talk you like, oh, come on, man.
Are you talking about yourself specifically? You quit smoking? And
I'm never going to quit smoking.
If I saw you, I've never had a cigarette, but if I saw you smoking like a Marlboro Light, that'd probably be the happiest day of my life. I wouldn't be able to stop. I'd be in such a good mood all day. People would be like, why are you so happy? I saw Steve Carlin smoking a cigarette, and I just can't get over it.
I flick it away and walk into the sunset.
That's right. There was so much right and so much wrong with it. It was overwhelming. Okay. One last thing on this. This 2023 study of Medicaid patients found that women whose first pregnancy ends in abortion are significantly more likely to utilize mental health services and more likely to require inpatient services. this is the most notable part of this. It also showed that prior mental health issues were not driving the disparity. That's key, because if I'm pro-choice, I'm saying, okay, guys, yeah, you found a few studies, great. These women are crazy. They have other issues. You're just blaming abortion. Abortion's the most common surgery, as you talk about. Well, yeah, that's like blaming, getting a cavity. All your mental problems are on a cavity, and they remove all of that. They pinpoint that it is the abortion.
Yeah. It's well, the poor are the ones who need abortion more. Those with mental health issues are the ones that need abortion more, and that's just out the window with this data.
I think that this, all of this sort of drives one of my favorite pro-abortion people in the history of the United States was after the Supreme Court leak that they were going to overturn Roe, and the guy who went on television and said he hopes that all the unwanted babies go to Kavanaugh's house so that he can raise them.
Yeah.
So because he's at least he said unwanted children, which children they need to scrap that from the pro-choice talking points. So he wants all the unwanted children that are going to be born. They're all going to be poor. Probably going to be black and brown too. It's going to be terrible. They can go to Kavanaugh's house and he can raise them. And so we sit there and go, so what would you rather happen? Well, we kill him. It's like,
and it has to be Kavanaugh's house. It can't be Amy Coney Barrett's house, because she was just going to colonize them.
She was going to colonize
She
them.
might adopt them and colonize them.
You reminded me of that the other day, that we thought she was a good-hearted Christian by adopting children. That wasn't the case. She was a colonizer? Is that what they said? Yeah.
All the buzzwords: colonizer, imperialistic, everything. All of the buzzwords.
I remember imperialistic was in there. There was a lot of stuff in there, and she just thought, I was just trying to help a child.
How many unwanted babies have you adopted? Well, Amy Coney Barrett adopted a bunch, but she's an imperialist.
She's an imperialist.
A colonizer.
It's not good enough.
There is one other factor we haven't talked about. When a woman and a man bond, it's more than just a physical thing, whether a baby is conceived or not. Several hormones and peptides and chemicals are exchanged that affect the central nervous system of the man, but particularly the woman. There is imprinting. When the man does not want to accept that child and accept a relationship with that baby and with that mother, you have a disruption of that connection. So here you have the situation, right? The woman tells the young man or older man, I'm pregnant. Oh, well, all the answers, by who? Or really, whatever you decide to do is okay with me. Right? Peace out, right? Well, you've already initiated something when the woman, right there, rejection.
Yeah.
Rejection. Now, we're going to probably have at least a podcast too, where we're going to have to get into this men's issue and abortion, manhood, and not manning up and dealing with our children is a whole nother issue we don't have time to discuss today. But these women are abandoned by their mate.
Always.
The person who was supposed to be their partner in raising this child.
And there are really good men who have stood up and tried to prevent an abortion, and because we harp on men a lot. But the reality, and I hate to say it, and I'm not just trying to sound negative, it's the exception of the rule. We've talked about how bad men benefit from abortion. It's really great. Like the worst men, you can pretty much be promiscuous, sleep with whoever you want. If they get pregnant, you have this backup. And that's abortion. That's what it's for the men, and usually for the women too. So, but the men have completely abandoned. We physically see it because they're hardly ever there on the day of the abortion. they can definitely manipulate the situation and say, I'm leaving you if you do have the baby. I'm not raising this baby. And something we have talked about on the podcast even recently is, the opposite is true. When the man steps up, if you want to get into the poverty factor, that families who have children, particularly men, there's a built-in motivation to maybe get a better job or try to get a promotion or change careers, and that having children motivates you and is healthier economically to get you out of poverty. If you're just running around doing your own thing, acting selfish with no responsibility, it kills your motivation to get a better job. And so it just goes in the complete opposite direction. But you're right, women are just left out to dry and they're alone, and you can understand half the abortions are repeat abortions, because if she gets in the same position a few years later, you just resort back to that solution that worked the first time, because you can't trust the man, and it's this horrific cycle. But boy, it is nice when we get those stories though of the boyfriend going in saying, "Don't do this. I will raise the baby. I'm not leaving you." And the woman just has a meltdown of gratitude and leaves. And that does happen. It's just rare.
The most tragic thing that we hear is the woman has the abortion she doesn't want because she thinks the man wants her to have an abortion, and the man doesn't encourage her to choose life because he thinks it's her body, her choice.
Yeah.
It's like the end of Romeo and Juliet in a way.
It is. And it's also the lack of communication and assuming what society wants you to think is true, and they both don't get what they want. Okay, so does this even matter? Killing is killing, even if it doesn't impact the mother. Do we care that she has mental health issues?
Yeah, if there was no mental health impact, would we say abortion is then abortion's fine?
Right.
No, obviously. But I think this is still a point worth making, because so much of the pro-abortion argument is this false dichotomy that we have to pit mothers against their babies. And this is just one more piece of a mountain of evidence that shows, no, abortion is bad for them both and life is good for them both.
Yeah.
One other thing is, we live in a time where we like to write prescriptions quickly, and that's going to be the patch. If a woman has depression and is associated with abortion, well, you just take this antidepressant. I'll see you in 3 weeks. Well, you see him in 3 weeks, there's no change. Oh, well, let's increase the dose. Oh, if it doesn't work, okay, well, let's change the medicine. If we don't deal with the root cause, if the doctor hasn't spent the time to take a detailed history to find out what the underlying cause of the depression is, no antidepressant is really ever going to help.
Yeah.
But we rely so much on our technologies and our pharmacology when we really just need to get them the therapy, the analysis to deal with root cause. Not that happens all of a sudden, but unless you get to the root cause, it's like putting a Band-Aid on an abscess and putting an alcohol swab. Unless you get that pus out, you aren't going to have the healing that you need.
Yeah. And the last group here, young liberal women. Okay, so researcher Dr. Zach Goldberg reviewed Pew Research data and found that a majority of white liberal women between the ages of 18 and 29 reported to have been told by a healthcare provider that they have a mental health condition.
And even if you go to 30 to 49-year-old women, white liberal women, still nearly 40% having been diagnosed with a mental health condition. This is kind of speculative on my part. Is abortion contributing to this or not? I don't know, but it's not helping.
Well, it's not. It's just a problem, abortion or no abortion. Why are young white liberal women
a majority? That's a shock. It should be a shocking statistic, I think.
It's interesting how they would do liberal.
Mm-hmm. Because they broke it down by liberal, moderate, and conservative.
They did.
Yeah.
So this is the women that's saying, I'm a liberal.
Yeah, they broke it down by political affiliation and sex. And so this was just the demographic it was just a wild thing to see the line chart, right? And if you were a liberal, young, white woman, a majority said they've been diagnosed with a mental health condition.
Well, we've talked about on the podcast how white liberal women are the scariest people on the planet when it comes to eugenics. Thank you, Margaret Singer, for helping contribute to that. But yeah, that's a very interesting point. That's like a Steve. You saw that and you're like, you know what? We're gonna toss that out there.
Yeah, a little.
You're just angry.
I'm very cheery, especially with all my smoking.
Oh, your smoking
calms me down.
It's calming you to protect the liberal white women.
Another point there. We're looking at these percentages, but we also have to recognize as a collective community issue, we are a depressed or sick society. You see, we want to say such and such percent. Well, if you have a cup of coffee there, you can't have half a cup of black and half a cup with cream and sugar in it. We're part of that mentally ill society. Okay, this is a collective thing. This is something that we're going to have to work to get over. It's healing of a nation. When we were dealing with coming out of slavery, that wasn't just the South. That was the healing of a nation. When you look at how Israel dealt with, how they talk about sin, they don't say, well, the people are worshiping Baal, and they say, we have sinned. In Western and modern culture, we're going to have to accept we have a say in this. We are part of this sin, and the healing that we are going to have to see is part of us. But yes, we're bringing the solution, but we have the disease because we're part of the body.
I think the root of the disease, too, if you mentioned the West, is the abandonment of God, of just running away, believing in ourselves, embracing secular humanism, and saying there is no limit to what man can do, and we have very little need for God. And any problem, poverty, whatever, we'll fix it. We'll come up with a solution.
Tower of Babel.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. We are not as we ought to be without God. That's for sure. So
my big takeaway from looking at all the data in these studies, the main one that we covered here, which was from the Journal of Psychiatric Research and all the other ones that we kind of sprinkled on top, is you can take a libertarian position of like, yeah, so there's mental health impacts, but my body, my choice. I can do whatever I want to do. I've got autonomy. Leave me alone. I'm free to choose to enter into a surgery.
They'd be worse off if they were forced to raise a baby.
Yeah,
that'd be the argument.
You could make that argument. But what I think this should fully dismantle is the notion that abortion is healthcare. You can say you should have a right to it, but it's not healthcare.
No, that's a very, very good point. It's 100%. Nothing that is healthcare would make 80% of the people depressed.
Healthcare improves the well-being of the individual. Simple as that. It does nothing for of course, it kills the baby, and the mother's health is not improved.
Yeah. No, it's a really, really great point. Thank you both for this. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Haywood. And we'll put some resources, too, particularly for post-abortive healing or any mental health issues that you or a loved one may be struggling with. We will put that on the show webpage, particularly those who have had an abortion and are seeking healing. There are some wonderful, wonderful free resources out there for you. So take advantage for sure. All right, please rate, review, share this podcast. And if you've not already, go to 40daysforlife.com and sign up to be part of this huge campaign during Lent. And we hope that you are having a happy and holy Lent as we prepare to celebrate the victory of life over death in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. God bless you. We will see you next time.